In chapter 8, it deals with food that is offered to idols. Brother Sean and I have never talked about foods offered to idols, but I think that there's some cases where you may not recognize that a meat has been offered to a particular idol, and
Right.
it's not a transgression to partake of that meat,
Right.
because an idol is nothing. Paul says the actual object itself is nothing. But there are some people that could eat idol meat around, and maybe they came out of worshiping that particular idol, and it would be something to them. Likewise, when we talk about the subject of alcohol, it's the same thing. There are some people that may have been addicted to alcohol in their previous life, so to speak, before they came to the Messiah, and they have a problem with it. And that drinking, a sip would lead to drunkenness in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And so, even though we might have the right to drink a glass of wine or to eat this meat that may have been offered to an idol, in certain cases, Paul said, "Now, I'm going to forgo that for the sake of my fellow human being, or my fellow brother or
Yeah.
sister."
I've actually done that with friends that I knew had struggled, have been through AA in the past.
Sure.
And then we had dinner. And so I had the freedom to order a glass of wine or a beer at dinner, but instead I just decided not to. Didn't want it to be any form of a stumbling to my friend.
Beautiful. And that's what Paul is talking about. And in chapter 9, he continues that thought. And he basically says in chapter 9, I have the right to receive monetary compensation for my spiritual labor in the kingdom.
Yep.
But he says, I have chosen not to use that right, not because he was bound to make that choice or decision, but he's chosen not to use that right. And there's a part in chapter 9 where he says, lest I should hinder the gospel. Somewhere down towards maybe 11 through 16. And maybe I'm quoting the King James when I said, lest I should hinder the gospel. But that idea is there. So
It is.
the
Yeah,
point is, go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, it's here. I just want to make a quick point. When you talked about chapter 8 earlier about food offered to idols, and we could probably address this in another episode in the future, but I think a lot of people don't realize it because they don't understand the practices of the pagan nations around them and exactly what the disciples in the Jerusalem Council in Acts 15 was trying to address as a first point of order, which is why they listed off these specific laws from Leviticus and Deuteronomy and Exodus about not engaged in fornication, not eating what's strangled, not eating or drinking blood, because these were practices that were taking place at these temples, which were all around Judea. Even directly at Caesarea Philippi, you got the Temple of Pan. They're killing humans and they're killing animals in bad ways, and then they're engaging in cannibalistic activities and eating the animals that had been strangled because it does something differently. I don't know all the biology behind it, but this is a part of these practices, and it wasn't the same as someone that says, "Well, I'm just praying over this in the name of another god."
Yeah.
Does that make any sense? You ever heard of Hallel?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So then people that say they would pray over it, and because this supposedly is one of the practices for halal meats, is they say it's prayed over in the name of Allah. Well, we know that Allah is not truly a god, right? So they're not taking that animal through any ritualistic sacrifice. It's not being engaged in any of the temple ritualistic occultic activities that are happening. It's just something while they're slaughtering it, they pray over it to in the name of Allah. So do you see that as the same type of distinction that Paul's trying to make when he talks about, look, these idols aren't really gods. Nothing's wrong with it if this is a meat source that's been offered to an idol, it's not been used in a ritualistic temple sacrifice. It's just at the market, and because the people that own the market worship Baal or Pan, then they're offering it to their gods. Is that your understanding?
I do. I think there's a difference. I think there's a difference between sitting down for a casual meal or buying something in the meat market to take home. There's a difference between that and actually going and participating in this ritual service to another deity. The Torah actually never gives a commandment against eating just a casual eating of meat offered to an idol. There's one case in the book of Exodus where it alludes to it, but the context has to do with an Israelite being coerced over into another religion or another faith.
That's right.
Worshiping that deity and partaking in that sacrificial meal to that deity. And I think that's the difference that Paul is pointing out. Paul is saying something about meats offered to idols, or let me say it like this. Paul is saying something about idols when he says an idol is nothing. It's the same thing that the prophet Jeremiah said in Jeremiah 10, where he said, an idol's like a scarecrow in a cucumber patch. It can't do anything evil. It can't do anything good. So the idol is nothing concept was something that was already understood in the Torah and the prophets. So I'm with you. I'm definitely with you on that. I don't make a habit of trying to pick out meats that have been offered to other gods. But if by some chance that, I buy a cut off of a clean animal, and by some chance that might have been offered to another deity, I don't ask any questions about that. If it's a clean cut and I know that Yahweh allows me to eat it, I eat it, because the earth is Yahweh's and the fullness thereof, right?
Yeah.
But I would never go to a pagan temple and sit down and pray and participate in that ritual sacrificial meal to that particular idol.
Small business needs customers. Customers need small business. GoodLand offers a one-of-a-kind search marketing platform that does the work for everyone. For customers, it's a digital coupon machine, helping you save your hard-earned money. For businesses, it's advertising in your area without the headache of marketing or software that makes you pay to win. GoodLand will reveal the businesses and customers you didn't know existed. For example, Joel spent 12 years working with wholesalers to give you the most affordable price, but he can't compete with large corporations who outspend him in advertising. Lauren grows organic produce and sells products with ingredients you can pronounce. But because she doesn't have a website, she practically doesn't exist. John makes the best flooring in town, but he hasn't been around long, so he's buried in traditional search engines. GoodLand gives you the power to get in front of people. Our money is power, and where we spend it matters. If we buy from people like them, we support the very community we live in. That money goes for food on the table, dance shoes, or a special family night out. Or that money comes right back to you. No longer are we forced to buy from corporations that don't support our community. You now have high-quality options that are closer and more affordable, all while building a local chain of supply and demand to be sufficient and sustainable amongst ourselves. Join GoodLand with a free trial today and see what GoodLand can do for you.